There's a particular kind of stillness that settles over you when the picture finally completes itself. Not the explosive revelation you see in films, but something quieter, more permanent. It's the moment when scattered fragments of confusion suddenly arrange themselves into undeniable truth, and your nervous system exhales with something between grief and relief. You finally understand what happened, and more importantly, why you felt so disoriented for so long. This clarity doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It arrives in the small hours when you're reviewing a conversation and notice the gap between what was said and what was meant. It crystallizes when you recognize a pattern repeating for the 3rd, 5th, 10th time, and you can no longer rationalize it away as coincidence or misunderstanding. The evidence was always there, scattered across months or years, but you weren't ready to assemble it. Your heart needed time to catch up with what your intuition had been whispering all along. Understanding what actually occurred changes something fundamental in how you move through the world. Not because you become cynical or closed off, but because you stop arguing with reality. You spent so much energy trying to make the narrative make sense, trying to reconcile someone's words with their actions, trying to understand why care felt conditional and support felt strategic. You blamed yourself for not understanding, for being too sensitive, for reading too much into things. But you weren't wrong. Your perception was accurate. The dissonance you felt was real, because the situation itself was dishonest. When truth finally settles, it doesn't shatter you the way you feared it might. Instead, it does something unexpected. It validates every instinct you were taught to ignore, every boundary you apologized for having, every moment you felt something was off, but couldn't articulate why. The chaos wasn't in your head. The manipulation wasn't imagined. The timing that always seemed to benefit someone else wasn't accidental. You weren't losing your mind. You were gaining information your heart didn't want to accept yet. This recognition phase is where many people expect rage or collapse, but often what emerges is something else entirely. A deep, bone-level calm. Because uncertainty is exhausting in ways that truth never is. Even painful truth provides solid ground. You can build on honesty, even when it's ugly. You cannot build on shifting sand that rearranges itself every time you try to find your footing. So when clarity comes, despite the ache it brings, there's relief. The confusion lifts. The constant second-guessing quiets. You're no longer fighting to make sense of contradictions because you finally see them for what they are. What happens next is gradual but profound. You begin to notice how certain dynamics only functioned because you were willing to carry the weight of confusion for everyone involved. You were the one smoothing over inconsistencies, making excuses for behavior that needed none, translating cruelty into misunderstanding so that relationships could continue. You absorbed tension, minimized hurt, and stayed patient past reason because you believed that's what love and loyalty required. But you're starting to see that real love doesn't ask you to doubt your own perception. Real loyalty doesn't require you to betray your instincts. The shift in your energy is subtle but unmistakable. You're not performing anymore. You're not auditioning for acceptance or trying to prove your value through overgiving. You're simply present, but with new boundaries that weren't there before. These aren't walls built from bitterness. They're standards built from self-respect. You've learned the difference between being open and being available for exploitation, between being kind and being compliant, between being understanding and being a receptacle for other people's avoided accountability. People notice this change before you announce it. Conversations that used to hook you emotionally now slide past without impact. Guilt trips that once worked fall flat. Attempts to reignite old dynamics feel hollow and obvious. You're not angry or cold. You're just no longer participating in patterns that require your confusion to survive. And that non-participation is more disruptive than any confrontation could be. Because you're not giving them anything to push against. You're not arguing, defending, or explaining. You've simply recalibrated around truth, and truth needs no defense. This is where you discover something powerful about human behavior. Many relationships were never designed for your growth. They were structured around a version of you that stayed uncertain, that questioned yourself more than you questioned inconsistencies, that prioritized harmony over honesty. When you outgrow that version, when you become someone who trusts their own perception, certain connections naturally dissolve. Not through drama or confrontation, but through the quiet recognition that you're no longer compatible with dynamics built on your self-doubt. You start asking different questions now, not, how do I fix this? But, why am I trying to fix something that was never broken, just dishonest? Not, what did I do wrong? But, what did this situation teach me about my own patterns and boundaries? Not, how do I make them understand? But, do I need to be understood by people who benefit from my confusion? These questions change everything because they shift the focus from external validation to internal clarity. The past doesn't haunt you the way it used to. You're not replaying conversations, looking for what you missed or rehearsing what you should have said. You've integrated the lessons and released the need to rewrite history. What happened, happened. People showed you who they were through their actions, their timing, their choices when it mattered. You don't need apologies that will never come or explanations wrapped in more deflection. You have something more valuable now, perspective. This perspective reveals patterns you couldn't see when you were inside them. You notice how certain people only reached out when they needed something. How support appeared when it was convenient, but vanished when it required sacrifice. How your boundaries were respected only until they became inconvenient. How your pain was always less urgent than their comfort. These aren't accusations or attacks. They're observations. And observations don't need to be argued. They simply inform how you move forward. Something shifts in how you relate to others now. You're still capable of deep connection, but you're selective about where you invest that capacity. You've learned that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. That privacy isn't secrecy, it's protection. That you don't owe explanations to people who aren't genuinely trying to understand. You can be warm without being available, present without being accessible, kind without being naive. Your tolerance for dishonesty has evaporated entirely. Not because you're rigid or unforgiving, but because you've seen what it costs to ignore red flags. You believe people the first time they show you who they are. You trust patterns over promises. You honor your instincts over your hopes. This doesn't make you hard. It makes you grounded. There's a difference between being closed off and having standards. Between being untrusting and being discerning. You haven't lost your capacity for connection. You've refined your criteria for who receives it. The loneliness that sometimes accompanies this phase isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you're doing something right. You're no longer filling your life with connections that drain you. You're creating space for relationships built on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care. That space might feel empty for a while, but empty is better than toxic. Silence is better than false harmony. Solitude is better than company that requires you to diminish yourself. You've also stopped seeking closure from people who were never honest to begin with. Closure is something you give yourself by accepting what is rather than what you wished it would be. You close the door by walking through it and not looking back, not by getting someone else to acknowledge the harm they caused. Their acknowledgement was never necessary for your healing. Your recognition of what happened is enough. This doesn't mean you've become unfeeling or detached from emotion. You feel deeply, perhaps more deeply than before, but you're no longer controlled by those feelings. You can feel hurt without letting it dictate your actions. You can feel anger without letting it consume you. You can feel disappointment without letting it define you. Your emotions are information, not instructions. They tell you what matters, but you decide what to do with that information. The version of you that existed before this clarity seems almost like a different person. Not because you've changed completely, but because you've stopped abandoning yourself to maintain relationships that required your self-betrayal. You're no longer editing your truth to make others comfortable. You're no longer minimizing your needs to appear low maintenance. You're no longer performing a version of yourself designed to be palatable to people who never appreciated the authentic you anyway. What emerges from this transformation is someone who moves with quiet authority. Not arrogance, but self-assurance. Not hardness, but boundaries. Not bitterness, but wisdom. You know what you'll accept and what you won't. You know the difference between connection and obligation. You know when to speak and when your absence says more than words ever could. This knowing isn't theoretical. It's embodied. It lives in how you carry yourself, how you respond to disrespect, how you protect your peace. People from your past might resurface, testing whether the old dynamics still work. They'll approach cautiously, indirectly, watching to see if you're still the same person they once knew how to handle. You're not, and you don't need to announce that. Your energy communicates it clearly. The way you don't rush to respond. The way you don't explain yourself. The way you're no longer invested in their perception of you. They feel the shift even if they can't articulate it. Some will accuse you of changing, as if that's something to defend. But you have changed. You've evolved. You've learned. You've grown beyond the confines of who you were when you didn't know what you know now. And you're not apologizing for that growth. You're not shrinking back down to make anyone comfortable with their stagnation. You're honoring the journey that brought you here, even though it was painful. The truth you've discovered hasn't made you cynical about human nature. If anything, it's made you more compassionate, both toward yourself and others. You understand now that people operate from their own wounds, their own fears, their own limitations. Their behavior toward you was never really about you. It was about what they could or couldn't do with their own pain. Understanding that doesn't mean you have to stay. Compassion doesn't require you to continue giving people opportunities to harm you. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can forgive without reconciling. You can understand without returning. What you're building now is something quieter but infinitely stronger. A life where your worth isn't negotiable, where your boundaries aren't apologies, where your presence is a choice, not a given, where the people around you have earned their place through consistency, not familiarity, where you're not afraid of being alone, because you've learned that being alone is vastly preferable to being with people who make you feel lonely. This is the phase where you stop waiting for permission to live authentically. You stop seeking validation from sources that were never meant to provide it. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who decided who you were before you spoke. You simply exist as you are, unapologetically, and let that be enough. Because it is enough. You are enough. You always were. The clarity didn't destroy you. It freed you. And freedom, real freedom, is the ability to see truth without flinching, to honor your perception without apology, and to build a life that reflects your values rather than other people's expectations. You're not the same person who started seeking answers. You're someone who found them, integrated them, and used them to become more aligned with who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and compromise. You walk forward now without the weight of confusion, without the burden of trying to make sense of what was never meant to make sense. You carry only what serves you: the lessons, the boundaries, the clarity, and the unshakable knowledge that you can trust yourself. That's the gift that came wrapped in pain. The ability to see clearly, move consciously, and live authentically. And no one can take that from you because it was never theirs to give.